Hello, welcome to Stormwater 101 video. My name is Shahram Misagi and I work for University of Minnesota Extension Water Resources team. Really excited to be here and share with you about the science of stormwater. The topic for this video is the treatment train. And we'd like to start with the basics of stormwater, a quick review before we get into the detail of talking about treatment trains and what that approach means. Well, let's go back to our graphics here, where we remind us what are the main three problems that are created due to excessive stormwater runoff. Remember that the excessive stormwater runoff generates three major problems. It increases the amount of the water in our stormwater systems or in our creek or streams, so we end up with too much water because now that the rain comes on the landscape that has been altered and it doesn't have a place to get captured by trees or maybe infiltrate into the ground, so that water or the rain is generated as runoff and finds its way very quickly to our stream. So we end up with too much water. We have an increased amount of runoff generated. And that water, now we have too much water that moves very quickly downstream. So we have an increase in rate. So the water moves faster, which it has a lot of energy, and it causes erosion and wash with itself the sediments and other pollutants on the hard surface. And that degrades the quality of our water. So the three main problems of the excessive stormwater are quantity, quality, and the rate. And anytime we use any practices to address these two problems, we refer to those as stormwater practices. So we have many different solutions. We've talked about structural and non-structural stormwater practices. We can talk about education to make folks aware not to wash their cars on a hard surface, but rather do it on the yard or on the grass where the water can be absorbed into the ground, not create the runoff. Or we can have a structural, such as water quality pond. These are structural stormwater practices where we can capture the water, remove help to remove the sediment and make the water clear before it can go slowly downstream. So we can also control the rate. And so these are all called stormwater practices, or actually the solutions to the three main problems of excessive stormwater runoff. However, there is we can be a lot more effective in applying the solutions if we use them in a proper order, and that is really the magic behind the treatment train approach. Let me share with you another graphics. So again, very quickly, when we know what the problem is, right? We have the water that comes on our hard surfaces and it gets generated as runoff and finds itself into the creeks and into our lakes. And with it brings the pollutants and degrades the water quality. So we have too much water moving too fast, degrading the water quality. And we have, as we talked about, we have stormwater practices, either structural or non-structural, that we can use to minimize the volume of the water, or help by maybe having a rain garden, promote infiltration of the rain water into the ground. So we have different solutions to address these problems. However, what we have found is that it's most effective if we use them in a certain order. And the order is, well, first of all, if we can do any practices that would minimize or eliminate the stormwater runoff. Pollution prevention. If we can prevent the problems from happening in the first place, that's really the best strategy. That's where we get the best return on our investment. And after we have tried to minimize the problem, prevent as much of the runoff, then maybe in our site we still end up with some water on our rain on our site. And that step, what we want to do, we want to implement the stormwater practices that help us to infiltrate the water into the ground, or as you may have heard the phrase, stop the rain where it falls. What can we do to help the water infiltrate into the ground and never allow it to be generated as stormwater runoff? And those stormwater practices are what we call source control. So they, again, such as rain garden, where we plant different plants into an area and promote infiltration of rain into the ground, or maybe by creating swales, anything that would promote infiltration of the water into the ground and reducing the volume of the water that flows downstream. Hence the size of the thickness of the arrow. You can see as we go through this chart, the arrows becomes narrower, so there's less water moving downstream from our sites. Well, let's say we have done much we can with pollution prevention. We stopped putting our grass on the streets. We constructed rain gardens to promote infiltration as much of the rain that falls on our property into the ground, but we still end up with some of the rain as runoff on our site. So what do we do with that runoff? We cannot simply let it go into our water bodies downstream, so we need to treat them. And so those are some of the stormwater practices that we use to treat that excessive stormwater runoff. And what's a good example of the treatment of the water, of stormwater runoff? Maybe it's the water quality ponds. Again, those are the ponds that we construct to trap the water, hold onto the water to allow the sediments to fall, so we can separate the sediments from the water, make the water a little cleaner, and gently allowing the water to go downstream. So that is what can be considered a water treatment, an on-site water treatment facility, or stormwater practices. Now they can be either at regional scales and a larger scales, or more of a local, and then so we can treat the water before it goes again into ultimately into a water body. This is really what we mean by the treatment train approach, where we apply different solutions at different stages in order first to minimize and prevent stormwater runoff to begin with. What can we do to reduce the runoff, to minimize the runoff? And after we've done that, after we've done all the preventive methods, then we talk about, well, what kind of stormwater practices can we employ to reduce, to minimize, again, to control how much rain we have on site. So how can we promote infiltration into the ground? And that's our source control. And ultimately, then we're going to treat whatever we're left at the end. And that example of that would be water quality pond. So this is our stormwater treatment train approach, and that's what is where we can have a very effective system of treating and capturing stormwater runoff, and making sure it's clean before it goes into our water bodies downstream. Thank you.